Hello, Laverne here, and thank you for joining me in this fifth video in the series having to do with the teachings of Enoch. Now in this video I'm going to be talking about prophecy and how when we read Enoch, so much more of the prophecy we find in the 66 books makes sense, and they just fall into place. Now before I get into the teaching, I would like to say that whether you are a creationist who believes that the earth itself is only 6,000 years old, or you are someone who has adopted into your belief system the evolution notion, and that the earth is billions of years old, and as well as the universe. It doesn't matter what your belief, because what Enoch shows us is that there's a significant time period that God considers important and that we need to see as being significant. And that is an 8,000 year period. From the birth of Adam to the end of the heavens and the earth as we know them. There is this 8,000 year period. So whether you believe Adam was the first man ever created, or whether you believe that the earth was around for a bit, there were humans, but that they did not have the Spirit of God in them, the consciousness that God breathed into Adam. It doesn't matter which belief system you have, but when you read Enoch, you see that what God is trying to show us is there is an 8,000 year period that is very significant. And that's what the Bible is. The Bible spans, or will span, a period of 8,000 years. Now, to explain this, I want to begin by reading from Psalms 90. I should have had it ready, but I didn't. Psalms 90, verse 4. And it reads, "For you 1,000 years are as a passing day, as brief as a few night hours." And here the writer is talking about God, that for him 1,000 years is like a day. Peter talks about a similar thing, and I'm going to be reading here from 2 Peter, 3rd chapter, verse 8 down to roughly verse 14 or 15. And it reads, "But you must not forget this one thing, dear friends. A day is like 1,000 years to the Lord, and 1,000 years is like a day." Actually, I'm going to skip a bit for the sake of time. Verse 10, "But the day of the Lord will come as unexpectedly as a thief. Then the heavens will pass away with a terrible noise, and the very elements themselves will disappear in fire, and the earth and everything on it will be found to deserve judgment." Since everything around us is going to be destroyed like this, what holy and godly lives we should live, looking forward to the day of God and hurrying it along. On that day, He will set the heavens on fire, and the elements will melt away in the flames. But we are looking forward to the new heavens and the new earth He has promised, a world filled with God's righteousness. So both these writers talk about a day being like 1,000 years to God, and Peter says 1,000 years like a day. Now, when we read this by itself, and we don't have the readings of Enoch, this sounds simply like, okay, God's a pretty big God. For us, 1,000 years is pretty major, but for God, it's really just a day. But Peter, when we realize he's drawing from the writings of Enoch, we see that there's a whole lot more to that. And when we read the writings of Enoch, we understand what actually is being said here. Now Peter, as I read, talks about a day coming when the heavens and the earth are going to be destroyed, at least the heavens and the earth as we know them, and a new heaven and earth created. Revelations 20 and 21 talks about the same thing. But it explains that before this happens, there will be 1,000 years of peace. And it is at the end of this 1,000 years of peace that there is a final battle with Satan. And after that final battle, that is when the new earth and the new heavens are created. And that is the time when hell and death and the grave and Satan are all thrown in to the lake of fire. Now all of this, what I've read, lines up perfect with the teachings of Enoch. But he goes into such greater detail explaining these things. He talks about the day of judgment and the day of wrath. He talks about the new heavens and the new earth being created. But he explains it in such great detail. He explains that from the period of Adam to the period of when the new heaven and the new earth is created is 8,000 years. He explains that the day in the 1,000-year comparison is to be taken literal. It is not something that is simply, this picturesque way of describing God. It's not figurative. It is literal. That 1,000 years from the time of Adam is to be considered a day. And for 6,000 years, there will be a period of 6,000 years, and at the end of it, there will be the second coming, and then the 1,000 years of peace, and then at the end of the 1,000 years, the final war, a new heaven and earth created, and all time ceases to exist. No longer is time counted. No more years, months, or days. All of this is explained in the writings of Enoch. And it doesn't contradict anything in the Bible, but rather it adds fullness. It affirms and confirms what we read in the Bible, but it adds more to it, a greater understanding of what God's plan is. When we realize there is this 8,000-year period that is significant to God and significant to us, it's just so much more of His plan becomes apparent. And other prophecy in the Bible, we are able to see what is truly meant by them. And false doctrine and false teachings are dispelled. For there are a lot of people saying, well, this particular thing has already happened, and this has already happened, and so on. But these false doctrines are dispelled once we include the teachings of Enoch. It dispels the false teachings and doctrines that are out there. And it shows us that so much of the prophecies that many people are saying have already happened have not happened. All right, that's probably about all the time I have. So, as always, I look forward to all comments. I hope you are beginning to see how there is so much in the writings of Enoch that affirm and confirm the things in the Bible, and they actually dispel the false teachings and doctrines that are out there. And it's because we have not had the teachings of Enoch that Satan was allowed to keep them out of the canon, that this is why we are not living by every word that comes from the mouth of God, and we must live by His every word if we are to understand His plan and His design for us. For when we only have part of God's word, that is how Satan is able to confuse us. And that's what's been happening for the past roughly 1,800 years. All right, until next time, peace and blessings.